How's it going, everybody? This is the Figuring Out Finance Podcast, episode number 20. I'm your host, Chris Rickenbaugh, and I'm recording a little bit late tonight on a Sunday, waiting for the Coke 600 to get back underway. So it's about 11 o'clock tonight on Sunday. So if you're a racing fan, you know exactly what I'm talking about with the Indy 500 today as well. But getting into today's episode, before we get into it, follow me on all the socials on Instagram and TikTok. I'm on YouTube as well, that I'm getting started at Figuring It Out Finance. And go check out the website where you can take the survey and ask me your questions about money, as well as signing up for the newsletter, staying up to date, everything that I'm doing, which I'll hopefully be having some exciting news about a flip I'm doing here soon. But go check it out. Let me know what you think. And let's get into today's topic. So today's topic is what I've learned coaching pole vault. So if you're not familiar with pole vault, it is a track and field event where you use a stick to jump over another stick. Just Google it. You'll figure it out. But so I've been doing this for a little over 12 years now, and I absolutely love it. So I had a great coach back in the day when I was in high school. I started in 7th grade, and I went all the way through 4 years in college. So that was a little over 10 years of doing it, and the last 2 years of college, I started coaching for some high school kids in the area. So I've been doing that for about 4 years now, and the girl I have now, she's doing great, and she'll be at the national meet here in North Carolina here pretty soon, and she'll be one of the top girls in the state. So super exciting about that, and really enjoying the coaching aspect of it. So I figured I might as well take a little bit of a break from the finance stuff and just tell you a little bit about what I'm doing, and a little bit about what I do on the side other than the real estate and the money. So some of the things that I've learned coaching pole vault or being the coach is that everybody's different and has different personalities. So comparing to the girl I coach now compared to my guy Brian, who I coached for my first 2 years in high school, Brian, he came from knowing absolutely nothing. So he was a cross-country kid and, just learning. So he was really quick, and he was he's an engineer, so he's a very, very analytical thinker. So being able to figure out what's going through his head, being able to understand how I'm able to talk to him, and just be able to explain the jump, how it works. Because if you're not familiar with pole vault, there's a couple different phases, which I'm going to get into. So if you keep listening, at the end, I'll break down a little bit more pole vault specific, but I want to focus on the coaching aspects here. So he's a very analytical thinker. So I'm just having to say, all right, you just have to do this. Here's your cue, and he's able to do that because he's thinking in his way through the jump. So now now the girl I'm coaching, Sasha, she's a little bit different to where she can just go. And it's really interesting to watch because there's almost no fear going into it. She's been able to learn and be fast and not really have to think. So when I'm watching her jump, I can say, hey, just make this little adjustment, or now use this cue, and her jump's going to be night and day. Because I started jumping with her when she was going a little over 11 feet, and we just got her to 12, and I haven't had a full session with her yet. So just the little cues and the little changes gives her a really big runway to be able to just jump a lot higher, and that's how it is for a lot of other pole vaulters as well. So just being able to focus on those little things and understand it from the coaching aspect. That's just plain knowing the sport. So tying this into business, everybody is in a different spot in life or business or athletics. So there's no one solution to fix all problems. Because if I tried using something that Brian was struggling with and apply it to Sasha, it would have night and day differences. They're just not struggling with that same thing, to where for Brian, you're having to teach those feelings to somebody of the swing, how the just, the athletics work to where Sasha is a little bit more developed on the athletic side to where now I have to get her thinking a little bit more analytical. So there's just night and day differences. They're almost flip-flopped. So being able to understand that from a coaching aspect, you couldn't coach somebody the same exact way because everybody's having different problems. They're all at different points in the athletics as well as people in business. So going into the next thing here, there's an order of events in pole vault. So in pole vault, if you're not familiar with it, there's the runway, there's the plant, the swing, and when you're going over the bar. So you're using these 3 to 4 different cues while you're on the runway, and then you're able to break it down to where it's not just all in one. So you're able to break down the different phases to be able to explain it to that vaulter. So when they're on the runway, they're standing back there, they're getting ready, and if I just judge, let's say they're coming from about 80 feet, if I judge from 80 feet all the way to where they plant the pole in the box, that's 80 feet to where I don't know what they're doing. So what I use and what I've been taught to use by the coach I had was Paul Babbitt. So go look him up. He's awesome. Taught me everything I know. And so you use this thing called a mid-mark. So it's pretty much what it sounds like to where it's just about in the middle of your run or about 3 to 4 steps away from where you would plant the pole. So if you're doing this right, you're going to be doing all of your warm-ups from this spot, and then when you're teaching that person to jump, you're starting to move them up the pole to go a little bit higher. They're starting to move back on the runway to run a little bit faster. You're basically going 11 feet back, and their left foot is going to hit that mark every single time once you've moved them about 2 steps back from that mark. And their left foot hits it every single time. And that's how you know if that person is on or not. So if I see one of my kids coming down the runway and they're dead on, I know they're going to take up that jump. It would take something really, really off for them not to be able to take it up. But for a lot of people, they're not using a mark like that. So it's just this 80 feet of, let me just go for it. Not really speeding up or going anywhere. They're just going 100 miles an hour, hoping it works out. So you're able to put in this mid-mark, and you're able to really watch it and judge it. And that's been the night and day difference in my vaulting as well as when I'm coaching. Just being able to break it up and then be able to put those cues and different phases into the jump, which is what I've been taught, as well as a couple really good pole vault books out there. But the mid-mark is on the runway, and then when you're standing back at the end of the runway, just about to start, you're looking at the box. And then when you plant the pole, you're looking at your hand, and then when you swing all the way up, you're looking at your feet. So those different phases all in the jump, and then that's on the runway, that's the plant, and that's the swing, and then you're going over the bar, hopefully clearing it. So how this relates to business is, in business, you're creating an order of operations the same way, just because without the systems, it's going to be really, really hard to get better or get consistent, and then you're not going to be able to scale. You're just going to be a one-man show. So once you create these order of operations, you're able to create roles in your business that you're able to hand off to other people. You're able to go work on the more important things. So it's the same thing from athletics to business, and that's when I've started to kind of develop my own business here. You can really tie it in just about the same way, and they all kind of flow together, and that's where the coaching and talking to more people has really come in, because you're able to work with the different personalities, you're able to see some differences and similarities in people, and you're able to just talk to them in a different way. So that's about how I can tie it into business, but getting a little bit more pole vault specific here, if you're still listening, is, so one of the biggest things I've learned is that the mid-mark. Not many people use it at the beginner level, but if you go to a big meet where there's lots of really good vaulters, a lot of those guys are using it. So being able to really start out, I call it or what Paul taught me and what I'm going to go through with all my kids, I'd like to really do camps, is how you're teaching them. So you're teaching them all the way from the beginning, how to run, how to plant the pole, and then you're teaching them how to swing. So he calls it boot camp. It takes just a couple hours, but you're able to go through all the phases in the jump and learn it, and then you get in the pit, and then you got to tie it all together. So the mid-mark is once you've kind of gotten through the run, the plant, and the swing, and you get through all of that, you really when you get on the runway, you're able to start at the mid-mark. So it's normally going to be around 38 to 49 feet is where everybody's range is going to be. So somebody who's a little bit shorter, has shorter strides, they're going to be a little bit closer to that 41 to, I'd say about 40 to 44 feet. And somebody who's a little bit longer with longer strides, they're going to be a little bit closer to 47 to 48, a little bit farther back like mine. So you start there, you have them do their warm-ups, and then when they're ready to start jumping, you move them back a certain amount of feet, you start inching them up the pole, and then they're able to be on a certain length of the pole to where it's going to start bending, and then you just kind of keep working them up the pole till they're holding a little bit closer to the end. If they're bending it a lot, move up to a stiffer pole. So for someone who's a little bit more experienced, and I like coaching the high school kids a little bit, or not the high school kids, but the college kids a little bit more because they're a little bit more developed. They're dealing with different problems to where if you're just learning, any coach that's teaching you the basics is going to be able to help you. So where I like the college kids is they've already had these, they already have the basics down. So now we're trying to take a guy who's going 13 feet, we're trying to get him to 15 to 16 feet. For girls, we're trying to take someone who's going a little over 10, and we're trying to get them to 11.6, 12 feet, and maybe a little bit higher. So where a lot of these kids are struggling at, they're really, really fast. So they want to come from really, really close to where they're scared to move back. And it's kind of confusing. It makes sense in their head because they want to come out close. They want to go full speed because they feel really fast. But so for Sasha, she was coming from really, really close, and she was on these poles, and she was coming up really, really shallow in the pit. So what I did was, all right, let's move you back 11 feet. You're going to feel a little bit faster. And then, what do you know? She was getting deeper in the pit. So we bumped her up a pole. So then she hit 12 feet. Interesting. So we already went higher, and all we did was move back 11 feet. It's because when you move back, the longer run is going to equal more speed. So when people come out blazing 100 miles an hour, what they're doing is they're hitting that peak speed right at the end of their run. So if you move them back, you just tell them to kind of ease into it a little bit more to where they're not coming out full go. So when they hit that mid-mark, that's when you need them at 100% because you want them at the fastest at the plant because that's where you're putting energy into the pole. So a lot of these kids, when they're coming out sprinting 100 miles an hour, they're usually losing speed right at the end. They feel fast, but if you're losing speed on your last 2 to 3 steps, you're going to not be putting as much energy into that pole. So that's why they're not getting deep, and that's why they're struggling on their runs. They have to be really, really amped up to be able to jump. Where I would rather take someone who's just kind of chill and just super consistent, and we can jump like that at that speed for an hour to an hour and a half. They don't have to feel 100% to be able to get a really good practice in. But the people coming from really close, that's what they're tied into because that's all they know. So when you're able to move them back and use that mid-mark to judge their run, you're able to have that advantage because you know exactly where you're at on the runway. You're going to have a lot more speed as well, so you're going to be able to get on bigger poles and jump a lot higher. So being back at 130 feet before, that doesn't scare me at all. But then I'll go to some of these meets or some of the kids I've coached, and they're coming from 60 feet. I'm like, all right, we're going to move you back. We want you here around 80-some feet, and they're freaking out. It's like, guys, if you want to jump higher, we got to do this. So the last one here is the swing. So if you're not familiar with the swing, we like to kind of take it to or relate it to when a gymnast is hanging on a high bar by just their hands. They're able to swing and get all the way up, kind of like a pendulum. So when they swing down, what it does to their body is it rotates it to where they're able to get completely upside down, and then that's the same thing in pole vault, to where they're reaching up like they're a gymnast on a high bar, and all they do is swing really hard down, and that rotates their body to be in line with the pole to be able to go straight up. So where a lot of people think in pole vault, oh, you have to be really strong, you have to push the pole. No, not at all. I've seen the skinniest kids be the best pole vaulters just because they understand that the swing is the most important part of the jump. You don't need to be strong, and there's no pushing or pulling in pole vault. So I'm going to say that again. There's no pushing or pulling in pole vault, because a lot of people, they try to get in that position that I was talking about, to where it looks like the gymnast is hanging from the high bar. So what they're teaching the kids are to throw their hands forward towards their feet, and they're calling that swinging. So that's just wrong, because you don't want to be putting your hands to your feet. You want to be able to swing to where your feet come up to your hands. And it's a completely different movement and a completely different mindset, because that kid in the beginning, they're trying to throw their hands to their feet. That's just going to put them in a bucket, and then they're going to have to figure it out later. Why am I not getting higher? Why am I not getting upside down? It's because you're not swinging. It's because you're trying to push or pull the pole. So when you get to a higher level on this, and you're trying to teach somebody maybe in college, they're trying to move the pole still because they're strong. They figured out how to get around it, but they get to that level and it's like, all right, this isn't going to work anymore. So when they keep trying to do that, that's when you start breaking poles, because it's not natural anymore. They're not just how it should be going. Is you're just running off the grounds with your hands up, and you're able to swing underneath that like a gymnast on a high bar, to where these kids are trying to move their hands forward. They're putting extra pressure into the pole, which breaks poles. So really interesting there if you're still listening and if you're into pole vault. So it's just a different way to look at it. So you can kind of rewind that and listen to me talk about it, but being able to see it in person, watch a lot of film, you're going to be able to see that they're swinging up to their hands and not moving their hands or pulling themselves up like a lot of people think. So that's all I got today. So I have a meet next weekend that I'm going to be coaching, hopefully, and she'll get a PR or do really good and basically just get ready for the national meet. So if you're still listening, I appreciate it. And this is all I got for episode 20 on the Figuring Out Finance podcast. We'll see you next time.